everyone. In this video, we are going to learn about the process of pollination in plants. Flower is the reproductive organ of the plant, and in flower there is stamen and pistil. Okay, stamen is the male reproductive organ and it has two parts, anther and filament. So this anther produces pollen grains. Okay, pistil is having again three parts, stigma, style and ovary. Inside ovary there is ovule and inside ovule there is egg cell. Okay, and this egg cell is actually the female gamete. Okay, so transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is required so that the male gamete present inside the pollen grain can go and fertilize this egg cell. Okay, so this process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as pollination. Hence, pollination can be defined as the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. There are two types of pollination process, self-pollination and cross-pollination. Okay, so this one is self-pollination. Now, in self-pollination, there are two conditions. When pollen grains get transferred from anther to the stigma of the same flower, this is called self-pollination. Okay, so the first condition is when pollen grains they get transferred from anther to the stigma of the same flower. Okay, and the second condition is when pollen grains get transferred from anther of one flower to the stigma of second flower on the same plant. Okay, so so the second condition is also a kind of self-pollination. Okay, so the first condition where the pollen grain was actually transferred from anther to stigma within the same flower. Okay, so the first condition is known as autonomy, and the second condition where pollen grain was transferred from anther to stigma of different flowers on the same plant. Okay, from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Okay, so this type of self-pollination is known as Geitonogamy. So there are two types of self-pollination, autonomy and Geitonogamy. Okay, now there are two types of flower and these flowers are called cleistogamous flower and chasmogamous flower. Okay, the first type of flower called cleistogamous is actually small, inconspicuous and closed self-pollinating flower. Okay, and you can see here in the picture on the next side, the first flower is of actually viola plant and the second flower belongs to oxalis. So in both the pictures you can see that the flower is very small. Okay, it is inconspicuous. Inconspicuous means not easily noticeable. Okay, somebody cannot notice them very easily. Okay, and stamen and the pistil, they both are enclosed inside the flower. Okay, hence as stamen and pistil are both enclosed inside the flower, so there is only one possible option left for the pollination, and that is self-pollination. So in cleistogamous flower, they are small, inconspicuous and closed. Okay, and second, the stamen and the pistil. Okay, here it should be actually stamen. So the stamen and the pistil, they both are enclosed inside the flower. Okay, hence only self-pollination can take place in cleistogamous flower. Second type of flower is chasmogamous flower. Chasmogamous is a type of large, conspicuous and open flower. Okay, it is large, conspicuous. Conspicuous means easily visible and open flower. Okay, stigma and pistil both are open and exposed in the air. So you must have seen hibiscus flower in your surrounding, or all the colorful flowers like rose, China rose, and then marigold. Okay, lily, water lily, lotus. So all these flowers are chasmogamous flower because in them the male and female reproductive organ, that is stamen and pistil, are actually exposed to the air. Okay, and in chasmogamous flower generally cross pollination or Geitonogamy takes place. Okay, and the example of chasmogamous flower is hibiscus, rose, marigold, sunflower, etc. Now the next type of pollination is cross-pollination. In cross-pollination, pollen grains get transferred from anther of one flower of one plant to the stigma of another flower of another plant of the same species. Okay. Now for example, you have two rose plants. Okay. First rose plant, maybe this is the first rose plant. And this is the second rose plant. Okay. And both of these plants, they belong to the same species. Now, if pollen grains will get transferred from anther of flower from the first plant to the stigma of a flower from the second plant. So second plant, and both of these plants, they belong to same species. So such type of pollination is known as cross pollination. Okay. And another term for cross pollination is xenogamy. Okay. Xenogamy. So the example is pumpkin, grass, grapes, tomatoes, maple trees, etc. Okay. The next slide shows the image of a pumpkin flower. So you can see here in this image of pumpkin flower, one flower is male flower and one flower is female flower. So this male flower which only has stamen is known as staminate. Okay. And this female flower which has pistil is known as pistillate. Okay. So these are pumpkin flowers. So in pumpkin flower, cross-pollination occurs. Okay. Now let's quickly revise and learn about the difference between autogamy, geitonogamy and xenogamy. Okay. So autogamy is a kind of self-pollination where pollen grains are transferred from anther to the stigma of the same flower. Okay. Geitonogamy is a condition where pollen grains are transferred from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Okay. And xenogamy is actually cross-pollination where pollen grains are transferred from anther of one flower of one plant to the stigma of another flower of the another plant. Okay. And both of these plants, they belong to the same species. So remember in exam, if you write the definition of cross-pollination, it's compulsory to mention same species. Okay. Then the second difference is autogamy do not lead to any variation in the progeny. That means the next plant which is forming, it will be mostly it will be like the parent plant. Okay. No variation is there as the gene pool is same. Gene pool means as the complete genetic component is same. Geitonogamy also do not lead to the genetic variation in the progeny, but in xenogamy, as it is cross-pollination, okay, so the gene pool are different. Okay, 50% chromosomes are from different plant and 50% chromosomes are from different plant. Hence, it leads to the genetic variation in the upcoming generation. Okay, and for autogamy, we do not require any pollinating agent. This is because in autogamy, both the reproductive organs, they are present in the same flower. That means the stamen and the pistil. Okay. Hence, no pollinating agent is required for transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma. Okay. For geitonogamy and xenogamy, we require pollinating agent. The last difference is we have studied about two types of flower, cleistogamous flower and chasmogamous flower. So pollination occurs in autogamy. In autogamy type of pollination occurs in cleistogamous flower. Okay. And geitonogamy and xenogamy type of flower occurs in chasmogamous flower. So we are done with the types of pollination, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. And we have also seen or learned the difference between autogamy, geitonogamy and xenogamy. Okay. If you have any doubt related to any of these concepts, please mention that in the comment section below and I will definitely revert back with the answer. Okay. In next video, we will discuss about the adaptations which these plants or the flowers, they possess for promoting self-pollination.